When we list the people who carried out the heinous crimes of the Third Reich, we tend to think of men like Himmler, Goebbels, and Mengele. But there were also women who were instrumental in the genocides of Nazi Germany. And in this new military history video, we are going to talk about one of the most infamous, Irma Grese. In other episodes, we already reviewed her role in the concentration camps as manager of the women's wards, but this time we are going to focus on her life after the war. Her captivity, her trial, and her testimonies that led her to the gallows in December 1945. Join us to learn about the last days of the Belsen Witch, one of the most feared criminals of the Third Reich. First, it is important to know what place Irma Grese occupied within the German death industry. Her career began in 1942, when she was just 18 years old. She applied as a guard at the Ravensbrück concentration camp. After being accepted and showing up at her parents' home wearing an SS uniform, her father, openly anti-Nazi, threw her out of the house. She took revenge by reporting him to the authorities. After a time in Ravensbrück, Grese entered the Auschwitz concentration camp in 1943 as a female guard. Such was her performance that by the end of that year she was promoted to supervisor, the second highest ranking woman in the entire camp after the infamous Maria Mengele. She was in charge of 30,000 inmates of Jewish origin, whom she subjected to all kinds of torture and martyrdom. After a stint in Auschwitz, Grese continued her infamous career at Bergen-Belsen, a Nazi death camp where she earned a place among the most sadistic and violent female guards in the entire Third Reich. After the final defeat of Nazi Germany, during the early hours of April 14 to 15, 1945, the commandant of the Bergen-Belsen concentration camp negotiated surrender with the British. Early in the morning, the Allied troops arrived to find neatly uniformed German field personnel lined up, led by Kramer and Irma Grese, who retained her arrogant look. Photos of Nazi personnel occupied the front pages of all the world's newspapers with the headline, "The Beasts of Belsen." Irma Grese was one of the main war criminals at the Bergen-Belsen trial held between September and December 1945. Survivors from the camps gave her testimony, accusing her of murder, torture, and even sexual abuse. One of Grese's macabre traits is that she always used heavy leather boots, a whip, and a pistol, among other items, to mark her authority and beat the prisoners. She was also known for letting her dogs pounce on female prisoners to bite and even devour them. She shot people at random, for no reason other than the pleasure of seeing them die. On more than one occasion, she bludgeoned prisoners to death with her braided whip, and she had no qualms about including children and the elderly in her torture schedule. Documents produced during the Bergen-Belsen trial are macabre testimony to the conduct of Irma Grese. These texts describe in detail how she carried out her selections. Every Monday, Wednesday, and Saturday, she, along with other SS leaders, would select a group of women to torture and kill. Early in the morning, Irma would appear in front of the prisoners with her spotless uniform and her hair carefully arranged. The victims assure that the enjoyment in Irma's eyes was evident. With her gloved hand, the young German woman shows her victims one by one. Those women who, despite hunger and disease, still retain some physical beauty, used to be the first to be chosen. Gisela Perl, a Hungarian prisoner and gynecologist who served as a doctor to Jewish inmates, testified at the Bergen-Belsen trial that Grese liked to whip well-endowed young women on the breasts, so that the wounds would fester. "When this happened, I had to order amputation of the breast, which was done without anesthesia." She was sexually aroused by the woman's suffering. One of the Bergen-Belsen survivors recounted that on a certain day in June 1944, more than 300 selected women were kicked and whipped, then eliminated in the gas chamber. It is not known with certainty how many people were killed by Grese's direct action, but it is estimated that the figure was about 30 victims per day during her stay in Bergen-Belsen. Irma Grese denied all these accusations and stated that she only knew the final destination of the prisoners from their own accounts. She alone accepted having beaten the prisoners, but with her bare hands and for some good reason. She also admitted using the whip to maintain order in formations, and subjecting inmates to sports sessions as a form of punishment. This was a very common position among the members of the SS, who claimed that they were only part of a long chain of command and that they did not know the dimension of the genocide. Of course, taking into account the industrial organization that the Holocaust had, it is impossible that the camp guards did not know at least part of the entire extermination process. But, despite denying the crimes, Irma Grese never denied her Nazi ideology. In fact, she sang SS hymns during her stay in her cell. During the legal proceedings that took place in Lüneburg, Germany, she was absent and distant, always answering no, I don't know or I don't remember to every question she was asked. On the 54th day of the trial, she was found guilty of committing war crimes in the Bergen-Belsen and Auschwitz camps. At 22, she became the youngest person to be sentenced to death under British law during the 20th century. She was executed in the Hamelin prison, Germany, on December 13, 1945. Irma Grese stood out until the moment of her death. According to the documents of the time, she had a confrontation with the famous English executioner Albert Pierrepoint. When he tried to put a dark hood over the condemned woman's head, Irma violently refused. Pierrepoint slapped her repeatedly until he managed to overpower her and place the garment on her. The executioner hastily placed the noose around the defendant's neck, but failed to do so properly. This is why it is believed that Grese actually died by strangulation and not by hanging. But what has transpired the most about her execution is that Irma Grese's last word was schnell, which means quick, as if demanding that the deadly process be carried out immediately. According to news from the time, after her execution, Grese's body was mutilated and cremated before throwing the ashes into a drainage river. The latter was a very common practice to prevent the graves of former Nazi criminals from becoming pilgrimage sites or political gatherings for neo-Nazi groups. We have reached the end of this video. If you want to learn more about the trials of Nazi war criminals, leave your suggestion in the comment box. Don't forget to subscribe and activate notifications so you don't miss the next episode of Military History.